Happy Mother's Day, everyone. And I know for many of you, well, congratulations to all you moms. And for those of you that had moms, well, congratulations as well. Although I understand that for some this may be a bittersweet holiday. Perhaps your mother is no longer with you. Or perhaps your mother was not able to be present in your life for whatever reason. Many of us have very diverse stories regarding moms and going back. I'm blessed because, well, my mom was on the planet with me for a long time. And so I was blessed. Her name's Peg Bowers Cook. And then my grandma was with me also. So there's my mom and my grandma. And so I got to have two wonderful women in my life for many, many years. And besides that, going back in time, this is a picture of that's my grandma, the little one, and my great-grandma, and my great-great, and my great-great-great. So we have a history of wonderful women. And then if you add this picture, whoops, I better get it right side up. Here are 6 generations because that's my mom and me. And yes, I did look a lot like Dwight Eisenhower, people told me when I was young. But anyways, this is 6 generations. And so I'm blessed to have that. And I realize that for everyone that may not be the case. But I was thinking about motherhood and what it meant this past week. And I thought, what a wonderful opportunity, to have the ability to bring life onto the planet. I mean, that is pretty amazingly miraculous. And then our moms are committed caregivers, aren't they? From birth to the grave, they do that. And then I was thinking, though, that sometimes we have to be cautious because moms sometimes become almost like human doings versus human beings. They get stressed out. They start running on empty. And I thought of a dear friend of mine, and this was way back years ago. I was a friend in one of my book clubs in California when I lived there. And she was a very busy single mom of teens and working, etc. And one day I was at the gas station filling my car, and she drove up in her SUV, and she filled her tank only part of the way because she said she didn't have time to wait to fill the entire tank. And I remember thinking about that and kind of doing the math in my head and thinking, I think you're better off filling your tank than coming back again, but that's just me. But it got me thinking along that line, and I thought of one of my favorite stories from Joan Borysenko. And it's about a guru and a yogi. And the guru instructed his yogi that what he wanted him to learn to do to get close to God was to sit under a tree on the edge of a river. And he gave him a loincloth and a begging bowl, as was the tradition. And then the yogi left, and he said, you just sit here and contemplate God. Went fine. So every day, as is tradition, then the yogi would walk into the village and beg for food. And so he'd have his food and then go back and sit and meditate and contemplate on God on the edge of the river. And that went fine. And then a few days later, he decided that one evening he was going to wash out his loincloth in the river and then hang it on a branch to dry. Next morning, he woke up and a rat had eaten his loincloth. Oh, how inconvenient and embarrassing, because now besides going into the village to beg for food, which he also has to beg for a new loincloth. So he did that. Okay, he got it, went back, sat by the river, continued his practice. And a few days later, he washed out his loincloth, set it on the branch, and sure enough, the rat came back, ate his loincloth. He's going, oh my gosh, what is a yogi to do? This is very embarrassing to have to keep going back and begging for loincloths. So he had an idea. He thought, I'll get a kitten. And he did. And so the kitten scared away the rat. So now that's fine. But then the kitten got hungry, so now he's going into the village and he's having to beg for food, and now he's got to beg for milk for the kitten. This is very unbecoming for a yogi, a man of God. So as he was coming back, a wonderful thing happened. He saw a stray cow. So he brought the stray cow with him to the edge of the river. Now he has milk for the kitten, all set. Went fine. Then the summer heat came, and the grasses all dried up, and there was no food for the cow. So now he's got to go into the village and beg for food, and now beg for food for the cow. This is not acceptable into his mind at all. So over time, he decides what he'll do is he will plant some seeds along the land by the river. And sure enough, he did that. It was good soil, and the crops grew, and so he had abundant food for the cow. But now he's got all these crops growing, and he's having to tend to this garden, and it's taking away from his time to meditate. So he decided to hire some laborers to take care of what's now become fields of food for the cow, but just way beyond that now. Okay, so that's going, but then he realizes he's having to tend to, supervising his laborers. So he had a great idea. He thought, I'll get married, and then my wife can supervise the laborers. Always a good reason to get married, but of course that's just to the side. Okay, so he gets married, and she's supervising the laborers, but surprise, his wife does not want to live under a tree by the river. She wants a house. And now he's going to have to build a bigger house because she's now pregnant. And this continues. And so the yogi became, well, fat and wealthy. And 5 years later, after it began, the guru came back. And he's looking around. And at that point, the yogi was just resting against the tree by the river. And he said to him, "What happened here? I left you here with a begging bowl to contemplate God. What is all of this?" And the yogi said, "Oh, teacher, let me explain to you. I needed all of this to keep my loincloth." I love that story. Because I don't know about you, but sometimes we can get this momentum going where we're pursuing things. One, we can't remember why we're doing it. And two, it became very narrow. Of all the abundant possibilities in the world, we've now headed on this one path, and we must follow it at the detriment of ourselves and everybody else. So when I was thinking of that, and I thought, what it reminds me to do at this time is to relax a little bit and to give myself space to renew. And I know for some of you, with all that's going on right now, that might be quite easy. And for some of you, that may be seemingly impossible because there's so much going on. And I was thinking this week, I remembered the time that I was sent by my employer to take a stress management class at the University of Minnesota. And this was a few years ago. I believe now they would have a different format. But the format for that class was, it was actually about time management more than stress management, but I think they had the two kind of confused. And so we were given ideas like, when you go to the doctor's office and you're waiting in the waiting room, if you bring work with you, you could be accomplishing something there and not wasting time. And then there's that dull time when you're like at a stoplight and it's red. And if you have your work there on the side in the car seat, you can glance over and then be working on something in your head while you're driving down the road. It was called at that time multitasking, which we know is a myth. It's really switch tasking. And a long time ago that was, we got clear that is not the way to live. It stresses us out. And when we have so much input coming in all the time, it's very hard to hear the still small voice, isn't it? The voice of the divine, or whatever you want to call it, your internal intuition, whatever that might be, that speaks to us, because the universe is abundant with ideas. But we have to have enough space, which means you might have to turn the TV down or take your earbuds out while you're doing your walk, whatever that might be. I mean, my car time, I love that. Well, I don't have it right now, but when I have a car and I'm out and about, I love that time because there's nothing that's interrupting me. And my car kind of drives by itself with minimal input from me, hopefully. So I was thinking about this, and I thought, and with children, many times I have observed that they get in this get up, hurry up, get to school, hurry up, finish your class, hurry up and eat, hurry up and do. You can end up that the most common words that they might hear is hurry up. And I love my grandkids. Of course, I have very wise, they have very wise parents, but they have quiet time every day. And I mean, they've outgrown naps a long time ago. But it's a time they learn to relish it, where they go into their rooms and they do something quiet, which could be reading a book. It could be playing with something that's non-screen related, But what they're doing is learning to slow down. They're learning to soothe, to see the benefits of being quiet. And I thought, oh, isn't that great that they have that so early on? And I think that's going to serve them well. I love what the Indian mystic Meher Baba said. He said, a mind that is fast is sick. A mind that is slow is sound. A mind that is still is divine. Now, I might say that a still mind is a mind that is present to what is. And so I found a wonderful little snippet from Paula Godwin Koppel. And she said, a few years ago, I experienced the power of attention in the most moving and memorable way. I'd been reading Eckhart Tolle's landmark book, The Power of Now, noting how often I was not fully present in my daily life. In particular, I realized that I often half listened when my children, Ben and Emily, were talking to me while I cooked and cleaned. One night, I decided to respond differently. As I was setting the dinner table, Emily, then 13, came in and began telling me about a problem with a friend. Instead of continuing my task and answering her with rote ahas and reallys, I put down the silverware and turned full around to face her. I looked right into her eyes and focused entirely on her and every word she was saying. After a few seconds, my attention on her became so intense that the room around us disappeared. I lost all sense of self and felt as though I was falling into her, into the pools of her eyes, into her soft voice and tender heart. I felt overcome by my oneness with her, and tears filled my eyes. What we give our attention to grows before our very eyes. When we pay close attention, our perception takes us deeper and deeper still. Poet William Blake expressed how wonder-filled this awareness can be when he wrote, "To see a world in a grain of sand, and heaven in a wildflower. Hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour." I love that. And so when I was thinking about renewal this week, I thought there's some things that can help us with that. And one is quiet our environment, whatever that means to you. And decluttering is very popular nowadays, and I've been practicing it for quite a while, which I found is that you never run out of things to declutter. But I also found it has such a profound impact on me. When I, make a soothing environment, it changes me. And a soothing environment, I found out for me, is if you put things in cupboards and you put things in drawers and it looks good for the visitors, I still know what's in the drawer. And it doesn't have the same impact it might have on the visitor who assumes that I'm just, the wonderful housekeeper. But anyhow. And so what I did a ways back, I was doing the decluttering piece, and the piece I decided to declutter was my lateral filing cabinet, which is next to my desk. And I bought new color-coded files, hanging files with matching folders and matching tabs. And so I would, have different colors. And then I did it perfectly so that you could read them all. They were kind of, in that Z of where you could read. Oh, it was lovely. And it was great. The rest of my house was sort of that, put it in a drawer and you can't see it and you'll deal with it later. But what I would do occasionally when I wanted to just get even calmer is I just open up that drawer of the lateral file and look over. And there was an energy in that order that was palpable. So when we're doing decluttering and when we're doing clearing of our space and when we're making it more soothing, it's important to feel, what does it feel like for us? Because that'll be the real clue. So I'm thinking when it's time for us to renew and relax, then we clear our environment, and then the next thing we clear is our internal environment, or our mind. And that means I can have the most beautiful, pristine physical environment, but in my head, if I've got grievances, I've got forgivenesses that I have not taken care of yet, I've got old beliefs that I really don't believe anymore, but they're still kind of running around and making a lot of noise in my head, which can kind of happen when you're switching, when you're moving beyond, and you're putting in new beliefs. Sometimes those old ones still will clatter a little bit. But when I release what's inside, then there is room for the new to come in. I love the story about the student and the monk. And the student came because he wanted to gather new insights from the monk. And so the monk said, well, wonderful, we'll have some tea. And he got a cup and a saucer and he held it up and he started pouring tea. And as he poured tea, he was talking to the student, and the student was talking to him. And he kept pouring and kept pouring. And the student is watching because now the cup is full and it's overflowing and it's now in the saucer. And then his eyes gets even bigger because now it's overflowing the saucer and it's going on the table and on the floor. And he's aghast. He's going, my goodness. And then, he exclaimed, and then the monk very gently said, an overflowing mind has no room for anything new to come in. And if your mind is overflowing, like the tea, it might be making a mess in your life as well. I like what Matthew Fox puts it a different way. He says, in order to pick up anything new, we must let go of what we're holding on to. Yeah, kind of makes sense, doesn't it? So I have to create space for the new to come in. And I thought about white noise, or what kind of noise is there going on in my life that is preventing new ideas from coming in. And I want to get that old noise out. And then I want to create what I call white space. And if you've, my husband's a graphic designer, and white space is a term that's used in graphic art and graphic design. And so to kind of give you an example of it, I just asked my husband to hand me an old flyer he had made for me. Nice looking. And nothing particular about it, but it's pleasant enough. But then look at this is the same flyer with the same information. In fact, it's written bigger, so you should be able to read it better. But what happens is this one here tends to be stressful because there's not very much white space around it, literally, is there? Where you notice in this one, there's some margins, and there's some, and white space doesn't have to be white. It could be in color too. That's not what it's talking about. But there is space around. And when we have space in our lives, it's more soothing. So what I would say to you, if your calendar, does it look like this or does it look like this? Is there any room in your calendar? The other day, because I'm home, 3 people called me. It was so delightful. And you know what? I had room to have long conversations with them. White space in my calendar. And so to look at what your activities are in your life and for your family and your kids, is there white space there? Because white space makes everything look more soothing, more appealing, and just kind of gives us an invitation for the new to come in. So I've been creating white space in my life this week. As I said, in one day I got 3 fabulous phone calls from dear friends that I hadn't talked to for a while. And then what I did with my white space, because more ideas were coming in of how to renew, I thought, well, my body feels kind of like dancing. Because it's not walking the mall and it's not doing some of the, I really wasn't a mall walker, but anyways, you get the idea. So I went through my CDs, and what was the Whoopi Goldberg movie where she played a nun? I can't remember the name of it, but anyways, I've got the CD of it, music. It's great. I put that on, and I started dancing. I won't demonstrate because, it's for me and for the people who were looking in the window kind of laughing, but that's okay. So I started dancing, did some singing, listened to some music. I found like ideas coming to renew me are really important. Because like my friend who stopped to get a half a tank of gas, if we look at that metaphorically, we don't run well on a half a tank. We need to be fully energized and renewed. And we need the space to do that. And so what I encourage you is to do that. And even more, and then more fun ideas will come. And so one of the things that came was an old essay from James Dill Freeman, who is a former Poet Laureate for Unity Worldwide Ministries. And this one fit me perfectly. He said, to enjoy things is not to possess them or to be possessed by them, but to use them. The joy of anything is in the use of it. Rows of dresses hanging dusty in a closet, dresses no one wears any longer, tools slowly rusting in a tool shed where no one comes to work, books that have gotten yellow and brittle with age because no one loving hands ever are touching them or opening their pages, or a house in which no one has lived for a long time. There are few sadder things than these. And so he goes on to say, the joy is not having a beautiful dress in your closet, but to wear the dress. It goes on and on. And so I thought about that this week. And I have been home, like many of you, for about 8 weeks now. And I will be honest with you, the first few weeks I kind of had fun where I did the, get up and, wear your, the most comfy clothes you got. And, well, we're just friends. And you didn't have to really, I did not, dry my hair. I just let it dry, which is kind of a scary thing, I must say to you at that time. So anyhow, I did all of that. And I lived like that for a while, and then the idea came to me that I have these wonderful things in my closet. I have jewelry that I love, but I don't normally wear jewelry when I'm home. I wear it when I go out. And I thought, you get joy from wearing jewelry. So I started then about a week ago wearing my jewelry around the house. I started doing a little more to, actually curl my hair. And then I thought, I'm going to put on the clothes that I would wear, which all my clothes are comfortable, so that's not an issue. But the clothes that I would wear if I was going to meet you for lunch. And see how that feels, just as an experiment. And I did it, and I'm enjoying it. And I also realized that, too, my clothes are not sitting idly in the closet. My jewelry is being utilized, and somehow that feels really good. And it might not be what's for someone else, that might not be it. But when we give ourselves the space, which is what I was doing this week, I was given a lot of white space in my life, and then inviting in ideas that will help me renew. So that's what I would encourage, is that give yourself some space to see what amazing ideas come in that help you relax and renew, so that you can be the greatest possible expression of the awesome being that you are. So I wish you a fabulous week with lots of divine ideas coming in and lots of delight and surprise. And so it is.